right, good people, hello, I'm Chris Searles. This is a quick and yet again another a little bit too informal report. My excuse as always is I'm a one-person team and I don't have time to make videos the way I want to by any stretch of the imagination. I only have time to kind of write down the high points and tell you about them. So, week number 9 of the Central Texas Projects is about to begin. This is Biointegrity's project to move forest moisture-based circulation, moist air circulation, because the forests are hydrated across the Central Texas region where it's most forested. Essentially between South Texas, around Leakey, Camp Wood, Uvalde area, all the way up to Austin and Waco. Once we get that conduit flourishing again, then we should be well out of drought for the rest of the summer, barring any super catastrophic events. So here's my quick report. The Central Texas Projects has continued to perform extremely well. The main goals again were stimulating forest moisture circulation through strategic waterings so that we could prevent fire, and that has performed so far spectacularly. There have been several heavy rains now. There have been numerous super light to medium rains, and there's been a lot of greening and cooling across the entire region, as well as a little bit of heavy weather and some damage to a few people. We still haven't gotten enough rain, but we're making major improvements across all of the areas that we're targeting. And with a little more rain, the southern region where we have been located for the past 8 weeks will be out of its rainfall deficit problem for this last 365 days, which was one of the secondary goals. So in this video, I want to give you a quick review of what I've been doing, an update on what's happened most recently, and tell you what's coming next. All right, here's the review. I did not plan to start the Central Texas Project so early in the year this year. I thought I would start in May. Instead, we started in early April. I didn't also expect to do this many waterings, but the total amount of water that's been put into the system so far is still really small. It's about 1.5 swimming pools, backyard swimming pools. So the ultimate goals, beyond just eliminating wildfire risk, which is the primary goal all the time, and saving thousands of trees, those goals of getting out of drought and restoring self-watering, keeping the cool air circulating, and then refilling rivers and creeks, those goals are calling to me now, serving as sort of a North Star. They seem to be the best way to think of how to move forward for the entire region. And it's been what I've been following as I've been doing the watering so far. I believe if we can heal this South Central Texas area where I've been located, we can protect and improve all of Central Texas over this summer and over the long term. There's a lot more to do, but so far we've done about 68 to 70 waterings, depending on how you look at it. This has been at 14 sites, 12 of them in the Leakey area, and over the last 56 days. And actually I stopped watering about 5 days ago. So it's been 50 or 51 days. Again, the total amount of water is 1.5 swimming pools roughly, about 34,000 gallons so far in these 68 to 70 waterings. And what we got in return so far is 20 individual rain events in April and May, 17 of those in May, 16 of those in the Leakey area. More than 5 inches on average across the region has been accumulated in April and May. This is formerly normal, but lately, in the last few years, it's become abnormal for the region to get good rain in May. The drought history varies. It was worst in South Texas in 2021, but also really bad in 2022 and 2024. It was worst just north of that in the Kerrville area in 2022, but also super bad in 2021 and not good in 23 or 24. Same thing with the eastern side near Bandera, San Antonio, so on and so forth. 2022 was a terrible year for drought. 2021 was a really bad year, and 2024 and 2023 were catastrophic drought years as well. Then in my region where I live, the Dripping Springs, Austin, Texas area, 2025 has turned into the worst year. I haven't really focused on trying to move moisture into this area. I've done 2 or 3 waterings in the Austin area so far, the other 68 or so in the Leakey area. The worst years for drought where I live were 2021 and 2025 so far. 2022 also catastrophic. And then if you go over to the sort of western end of Central Texas where Harper is, 2022 was the worst year. So in other words, 2021 and 2 were catastrophically bad for the Central Texas region in a patchwork sort of way. And since then, we've been in and out of exceptional drought for the whole region. Since I started working in the region, before we got rains, we had spectacular greening and trees begin to come back. The tree salvation thing began to be obvious. And all that means no fire. Again, that's priority one. But what it also means is that biodiversity habitats and biodiversity functionality, biospheric functionality returns, which is what I'm working with, how moisture moves over the landscape through the living creatures on the land, primarily trees, forests, soils, and leaves. So what exactly am I doing? What am I even talking about? Well, it's simple. Slow watering trees and forests, or just think WTF, water trees and forests, but do it slow. You want to imitate an optimal or an ideal rainfall for your trees. I use the simplest possible equipment. I use buckets with one hole in them, and I put about 150 to 200 gallons on each of the trees that I work with that have an 18-inch diameter trunk around my waist height or greater. And then I work in coordinated and strategic locations in forests so that the moisture can accumulate in a grove, cycle locally, and draw in more moisture, as well as then another grove not too far away. It starts to do its thing, and the whole system begins to share again. The way I think of these forest systems is very much like the way your body circulates moisture. Your body is a porous machine. Moisture and gases move through the pores in your skin, but it has structure. A forest is that in a different way. The leaves have the porosity that moves the moisture through the air primarily, but the shape of the forest determines the way the moisture will move, and as it becomes better hydrated, it can move moisture more effectively across the landscape. There's a number of additional effects that are beneficial. I just want to list again. These are things anyone can accomplish by slow watering big trees. These beneficial side effects include an increase in cooling clouds, an increase in cooling air circulation, an increase in gray light and light quality, and an increase in shade quality and the darkness of the shading, an increase in mists and transpiration over the morning and through the day, an increase in what I call the transpiration dome, where you have basically diffused light and cooler air over a large area. We've had that over Lakey most of the last 2 or 3 weeks that I've been watering there. An increase in comfort level, because once you have all of this moisture moving through the air in such a fine, light way, it feels like much like silk on your skin. It's not hot, it's not cold, but it's cooling, it's relaxing. It's a nice feeling on your skin that comes into the air when trees are hydrated and circulating moisture. And then of course there's a cloud cover increase, and all these things can and often do eventually lead to rain. So in terms of negative side effects, the last 2 or 3 weeks have been the first time that I've really become acquainted with immediate negative side effects. There have been several hailstorms. The most recent one in Austin last week was really, really terrifying. And there was a flash flood that killed a person. There was serious hail in San Antonio back on May 1st. And serious hail in the Stonewall and Fredericksburg areas around May 23rd. As far as I know, a few buildings have been lost. One of my friends lost a building. Another friend lost a couple of trees. And I can't do anything about any of that. I think that hydrating trees is going to be the fastest way to avoid these kinds of outcomes. These freak accidents that come from weather anomalies, it's always been unpredictable how severe weather will come and what it will do. But I think they're far more likely right now, given a few things that human beings have done of late. Of course, the planet is a lot warmer than it was just 15 years ago, and that changes a lot of things. Also important is that global moisture circulation officially broke in 2024. I'll put the citation for that article down in the notes. And then I think most importantly, the trees, forests, ground-based, meaning on the ground, infrastructure that we have relied on for thousands of years of human existence has never been under greater attack than it is today. We've done a lot of deforestation in the last couple of 100 years and in the last 20 years, But now we've also got armies of people with mowers and trimmers and land clearing equipment. We're mowing, we're pruning, we're cutting. We're just constantly removing the one thing that can circulate moisture, which is the plant life on the landscape, because we have the wrong idea. It's a good intentioned idea, but we have the wrong idea. We think that removing all of the other plants will give the most water to our trees. But trees come from forests. Trees are forest creatures. They don't live in isolation. They live surrounded by other plants. The whole mechanism of a forest is about moisture sharing through the air, under the ground, through rainfall. And, you know, when you remove the material that does that from your body, from the landscape, then it doesn't do it anymore, and we end up in severe drought, which is what has happened to most of the world of late, but particularly this part of Texas where we're growing so fast. You know, there's some other things too that we don't think about. Running air conditioners, which of course we're going to do, but driving, idling for no good reason, running clothes dryers. These things all intensify the amount of heat on the landscape. You don't want to put out heat when it's hot. You want to find ways to avoid that and even use that heat, like to dry your clothes on a clothesline, for instance. So we are expanding the heat island effect by clearing landscapes without any regard for the value of that vegetation, and by running things, not just fossil fuel emissions, but by running things that put literal heat out into the atmosphere: engines, refrigerators, air conditioners, clothes dryers. All these things can be curtailed, and we can turn a corner more rapidly if we're sensitive to the reality that we don't want to have more heat on a hot day. So stop idling your engine. Start watering trees and forests instead. Given all these negatives that we are together exerting on landscapes and land life, and then again, not to mention the warming that's occurred in the last few decades, catastrophic weather anomalies are super likely right now. And I mentioned this a moment ago. I have a theory that is relatively well tested at home right now, which is that when you take really good care of your trees and forests, you don't get this extreme weather like what we just had in Austin over last Wednesday, Thursday. It appears that the weather that came to Austin, for instance, went over the West Austin and Hyde Park, right through the middle of town, but those areas are in the greatest rainfall deficit of just about any place in the state. In other words, those trees are some of the driest in the entire state of Texas. They were defenseless when the rains came through, then a hailstorm came together, and all of a sudden there's some sort of super combustion that happens in the atmosphere, and, you know, it was awful for those it was awful for. But it can be remediated through watering trees and forests. WTF, WTF, WTF. Hydrated trees, in my experience so far, they manage away extreme weather. They mitigate extreme weather when it comes to them. They find ways to avoid having extreme, awful things happen to them when they're capacitated, when they're hydrated. Probably then the best way to prevent future weather convulsions, where the weather just explodes and does something really extreme, is coordinated, slow hydrations of big trees and forests. This can be done by neighborhood groups, by neighbors, by landscapers, by property managers. It can be done by anybody that can fill a bucket, let it drain, and refill it again, and just keep hydrating that tree, slow and sure. Get it back into its optimal state. All right, all of this is to say that because the central Austin trees are some of the driest in the state, and that caught me by surprise, the next 2 weeks of the plan, I'll go to Leakey again tomorrow, finish at locations 1, 4, and 5. And then the following week, about a week from today, I'm going to start focusing on the Austin area for at least a week and see where that gets us. The second half of June will be about wrapping up and trying to coordinate partnerships so that more people are doing these waterings. I hope to go to other locations in the country that are extremely in danger right now and help get the needle moving away from fire, away from drought. Rain deficits are down, which is a big deal to me. The U.S. Drought Monitor is an extremely helpful tool, But I find that the Raindrop.Farm app that shows rain deficits is a better tool for understanding just how intense droughts are. And so on the rain deficit monitor provided by that app, you'll see that the Leakey area and San Antonio now have rainfall deficits of 10 inches or less. That's a huge breakthrough, because when we started it, it was not even sure we were going to be able to get moisture moving, and then whether or not we want to get rain, and then whether or not we'd be able to, people were saying, we want a 2-inch rain, we want a 6-inch rain, well, we've gotten several 2-inch rains, we've gotten several soakers now, and that's knocking the rainfall deficit back. I think it was well over 12 inches when I began, 12 and a half or something on average for Leakey, and now it's down around 8.5. The Kerrville area, which I was particularly concerned about, and the Medina area, their rainfall deficits now are less than 5 inches. And then north of San Antonio, in Helotes and Gray Forest and places like that, there actually is a rainfall surplus. It's small. It's less than 1/2 of an inch, but Gray Forest has about 1 inch of rainfall deficit now. Helotes is a little bit of a surplus. Bandera has a little bit of a surplus. That was a nice surprise. And I mentioned San Antonio has less than 10 inches in its rainfall deficit. And then you look over at the Austin and Dripping Springs area, and the rainfall deficits are over 10 inches, even over 13 inches, even after the really heavy rains we got last week. So, water, trees, and forests, WTF. We need you. We need participants. We need teams coming together. And I need help telling this story. If you are someone that's good at making graphics, good at editing video, good at taking tons and tons of footage and drilling it down, I have so much material, but I'm out there doing the work. I don't have time to make good videos and put all my hours and hours of footage into something that people can watch and something that shares the message more clearly. So I need help telling this story. Let's work together to get Texas in good shape for June, July, August, September, and October. Watering trees and forests appears to be the silver bullet for fire prevention, landscape cooling, and drought mitigation that everyone is looking for. Just watering trees and forests. Again, the amount of water that I'm using, the total amount of water for this project so far is just 34,000 gallons roughly. A swimming pool in the backyard of the average home that can afford a swimming pool has 20,000 gallons in it. 1.5 swimming pools carefully placed, drop by drop, by hand, on big trees, working with them slowly, one at a time. It works. It's just strategic rehydration of the best resource we have for moisture circulation through the air over land, big trees and forests. So join me. Support biointegrity, support me, grab a bucket, put a hole in it, start filling it, and put it next to your biggest trees, and let's WTF, let's water trees and forests. I believe we can end forest fire forever this year if we want to. I don't see why we wouldn't want to. There's no reason for us to have wildfire on the landscape if we just hydrate our trees. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Searles again. This is Biointegrity, biointegrity.net. Please get involved, and I will see you again really soon with another report.